Hi, this is Coach Joe Lucas, and welcome to this very, very special episode of the Magellan Network Show. If you're watching me on YouTube, you see that I'm not alone today. Yes, we have a guest. It happens rarely, but we like finding special people that can add value to our audience. And I'm very, very excited to share the next several minutes with Natalie Hales of Hales Advisor Consulting. And Natalie, when we get started, when I bring a guest on, I have three questions for them. Tell us about yourself. Tell us how you got here and tell us why you do what you do. I'll give you about 5 minutes. Why don't you unpack those 3 questions for us?
Of course. Well, first and foremost, I'm absolutely honored knowing that you don't often have guests. So thank you so much for having me. That's excellent. Really appreciate the invite. A little bit about me. I've been in financial services for the last 15 years, but I think the way that I got started in the industry is a little bit different. Funnily enough, it was, stem from the worst probably experience of my life, and hindsight's 2020. Obviously, it led to my purpose. But, when I was about 24, my dad had a massive stroke, and we found out that the result was because of he started stroking due to a hereditary disease.
Mm,
So, my mom was already disabled. My dad, who, was now also disabled, and I had literally just graduated university, just started out myself in the working world,
okay.
and found out, I could have this debilitating disease. And, it meant starting migraines when I was in my 30s, starting stroking as well, having physical, mental disabilities that come along with dementia and everything that kind of comes along with multiple strokes. And so when I went back to work, my boss at the time said, you need to see my advisor. What are you doing?
Mm, okay. So
And
so did you go to university for marketing and branding, or was this the accidental path that you ended up on like so many people do?
I went to university for business. So it's management and organizational studies, and kind of did a specialization in human resources and marketing. And so I did kind of start off that, path anyway. I was very interested in the marketing world, and I knew that that was something I wanted to kind of get into anyway. Human psychology was always fascinating for me. And so to be able to kind of do that creativity, have that creative outlet as well with the marketing aspect was something I knew I wanted to do. But I think when I realized that I wanted to work with financial advisors was really having my own experience with one, to be honest, because I had never sat down with an advisor before in my life. Neither had my family, very blue collar. And instead of kind of kicking things off with everything I needed to do, he sat me down and told me about the reason why he was in the business, and that his dad ended up having heart disease and passing away when he was about my age, leaving him and his mom without their sole provider and having to figure things out from there. And so, right from the get go, I kind of felt like this person understood me, right? They had a certain level of empathy and allowed me to have that level of trust, right? That I'm going to be able to figure this out with this person. He gets it. And when I walked out of there, obviously feeling like 1,000 pounds lighter, because regardless of the outcome of, my own genetic testing, I knew I was gonna be okay. And so when I went back to work, it was like, why do people not understand what financial advisors do and how they help people? And so from there, it was like, if I'm going to work with anybody, it's going to be financial advisors. And it kicked off a whole career. It kicked off, we were talking before this about a few of the more corporate places I've worked at, but I've been in, more of the hustle style marketing of the early days of what financial advisors, did to kind of get that level of visibility, as well as kind of practice management, eventually kind of transitioning into teaming and transition with Canada Life, kind of helping junior advisors pair with senior advisors, organizing books of business by profitability. But I did miss that creative side of things and eventually moved up into branding. But slowly worked my way to not working with financial advisors directly, which is like kind of the whole reason why I started this path in the first place. So I knew I wanted to start my own business. And if I was going to work with anybody, it was going to be financial advisors. And I just saw a lot of what worked and what didn't, having worked in so many areas and kind of worked with financial advisors for the last 15 years. And so it got me to develop my own program around niche authority. And that's what I do for advisors today. I help them connect with who it is that they're supposed to be serving and tell the right stories to get their authority out there.
Interesting. So what I find fascinating about you is your story. It wasn't like you had this thesis that, "Hey, I think financial advisors are a good place to go play." It's because you had a profound experience with impact
Yeah.
that kind of brought you here for a real personal story, and I think that's and I've always found that people that are attracted to this industry from what I'll call non-traditional, and that you would definitely qualify for that. I think there's a level of passion that is just it's so authentic,
Yeah.
right? That you just can't find it in somebody who says, "Oh, advisors, yeah, they make a lot of money and they're kind of clueless when it comes to marketing or business development or anything, quite frankly. So, what I would charge Johnny on the corner store, I could charge an advisor 5 times as much, right? Where you don't have that story. So, I'm curious about your decision to leave corporate America. Because corporate Canada. I apologize on that.
Yeah.
Corporate Canada. I used to say America. So, was there a particular day or a particular incident that you can recall that kinda kicked you over into, "I've gotta go do my own thing," or was it just like a natural slow burn that one day just you kinda hit that threshold moment, and it's like, "You know what?" 'Cause you made the comment a moment ago that it sounded like the longer you stayed in corporate, the further you got away from the advisor themselves. You're working up sounds like a couple tiers in in the management structure, and you
Mhm.
lost the trenches a little bit, as I like to say, right?
Yeah.
So can you remember, was it like a slow burn, or was there a moment that you can recall saying, you know, "This is what really
The
led me to tender my resignation and do my own thing."
Yeah. Well, it was, a bit of the definitely the combination of slowly moving away from advisors, and the work that I wanted to do was with advisors. And so getting back to that was very important to me, yes. But I also think a big piece of why I left kind of corporate is I truly believe that financial advisors, they need to understand, uh, and have two things, right? They need to understand their narrative, like why they are in this business beyond money. They need to have a unique point of view. And it just wasn't possible to help advisors in, the kind of more one-on-one kind of consulting that I found to be very beneficial for advisors at the scale that obviously corporate America, corporate Canada,
Right.
that they want to help advisors at. So they're looking to find some sort of scale that's going to work for, thousands of advisors at a time. And that's sort of the opposite of what I believe. I think that every advisor's story is different. Every advisor's business is very different. And so you really have to find what's going to work for them, not only, the story and how they're positioning themselves, but also when it comes to their marketing. uh, that's very different based on who it is that they're looking to target and what capabilities they have within their firm. And so to go out on such a mass scale was something that I just didn't agree with.
I agree with that. I agree with your agreement, by the way, because to me, it's like it all seems the same, it all sounds the same,
Yeah.
it all looks the same in some cases, right? There's no uniqueness, no individuality, no areas of specificity or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like just it's just like one turns into another to another, which I guess from a firm perspective, and this is just me now thinking out loud. I think the firms like that. They want it to be about the firms. The big firms want it to be about the mothership. For the most part, I mean, they may not say that out loud, but if you look at their actions, that would be the dictate. So you're an entrepreneur now.
Mm.
What do you love
And
about it? What do you love about it?
well, and I think when you are an entrepreneur, when you do have your own business, you know, for a fact that the only thing that works is actually looking at your own KPIs, looking at what you are doing and finding out what works for you and doubling down there. So getting really intentional around that instead of just like, following mass advice and trying to adapt that to work for you. Now you can do that at a certain level, but at some point you're going to have to say, is this going to really work for who I'm targeting? Is this going to really work for the capabilities within my business? Is this going to work for the structure of my business? And so you have to take all that into account when you are an entrepreneur because you want to leverage everything to the maximum, obviously, right?
Right.
So I subscribe to, being really intentional about what you're doing and consistently looking at what's working and what's not working and doubling down on what's working and just letting the rest go. Like,
Right. Well,
okay,
let's not try to do everything. Pick the areas or pick your pathways, right? And
yeah.
rock star those things. Be excellent. And I'm curious about your thoughts on this because I see this all the time from advisors. And I won't get into certain companies because I just don't want to get sued. FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these digital marketing companies prey on advisors' insecurities to get
Mhm.
them to hand over their credit card, thinking it's going to fix them.
Yeah.
In my experience is all it does is they waste more money and they make the problem bigger. So I'm curious your thoughts on something like that.
Oh, I have so many thoughts on something like that. My
Well,
whole
then, hey,
business.
we're unfiltered here. You can say anything you like.
Yeah, my whole
We just
business.
want to leave. We just leave companies out of it. That's all.
Of course. So I think a lot of what advisors are told to do and taught to do within the industry is to follow a certain model, right? And that doesn't work for everybody. And so it turns out to be this like hustle style marketing all the time that you're constantly killing yourself following whatever the latest trend is. And I understand the reason why, right? Like you're told to and it's from a very tactical point of view. And by tactical, I mean like you're told to just do YouTube videos or just do podcasting or just do this thing. And that's like a tactical solution.
Hmm?
Instead of stepping back and looking at it from a really strategic point of view, starting with your positioning, starting with then moving into your messaging, starting with, where you can find your audience and where those people hang out and what kind of messaging works for them to really get to them at an emotional level. That's deep thinking and it's a long-term strategy. It's not like let me sell you 10 videos and you're going to get leads. Um
But that's what the marketplace wants, though. See, that's the
it is.
challenge,
It's a
right?
tougher sell. Yeah.
It's no, it's a silver bullet. Oh man, if I get 10 videos, I'll get 10 clients, I'm good. And to your
Yeah.
point, there's no strategy. Just
No.
let's just go do stuff, right? And it drives me crazy as a coach
Yeah.
because these are really bright people. I mean,
Yeah.
I tend not to deal with idiots, but yet they get seduced by the marketing messages, right? And because I get this all the time. Hey Joe, this crossed my desk. What do you think? Like it's like, hey man, that could work for somebody, ain't gonna work for you because you're not organized to pull that off, right?
Yeah.
But the pool is so strong
Mm.
because because again they better be good, right? So they create all this messaging around fear of missing out and territories and things like that, or and they run the I mean 'cause apparently I'm an advisor on Instagram. So my whole Instagram feed just all these silver bullets. We'll raise you $3 million a month, $4 million, 20 set appointments, all this stuff, right? And in all honesty, I've had clients to do everything, and I can tell you that I think everything works for somebody, but it doesn't
Yeah.
work for it doesn't work for everybody, right? From that perspective. And that's where I think that's where a lot of advisors get misled
Mm.
into that. So with that said, let's talk about you a little bit more in terms of what you do and some of your I know you have some strategies. I want to definitely talk about AI because like who doesn't, right? From that perspective. So I want to get I've been pretty good at sort of going down the road 5, 10 years in this industry. I've been in it for 32 years and kind of seeing where the puck is going. I'll put in Canadian hockey terms that make you feel more comfortable. And
Thank you.
where do you think 2030, let's talk about 2030, which is not that far away. It's 4 years.
Mm.
But in AI land, that's like an eternity. What do you think this is gonna look like, in your opinion, 2030? What does advisor branding and marketing look like versus
Mm.
how it looks today? Like, what do
Yeah.
you think will be prevalent? What do you think will be working? What do you think in your opinion, 'cause you're an expert, is gonna be a bad idea, right,
Mm.
in that regard? So, let's spend a few minutes on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I completely agree with what you're saying, that there is this gap in understanding, right? When advisors are working with marketing experts, for example, they're going to them for those tactical solutions. But there's also this understanding that advisors have with, oh, they're going to help me figure it out. And then they're going to get to the tactical solution. And these marketers that are, they're experts in putting together videos or they're experts in helping people get, on podcasts or something. No, they're experts in what they do. They're not experts in helping you figure out how to position your business.
Right.
And so there's this sort of I joke around that it's this mutual delusion that they both have that, advisors are going to go to these marketers to help them figure this out.
Yeah.
marketers expect advisors to come ready to talk about exactly who it is that they're targeting, to come ready
Yep.
with the story they want to tell to.
Yep.
And so that in my business, that's the gap that I fill.
It's good to know.
Yeah. And so where I think things are going, and the reason why I've positioned myself to talk about niche positioning and to talk about building your own authority is because I believe that that's where the future is going for advisors. And so the financial services industry is always a little bit lagging and a little bit behind. So I think 2030, that's only 3 years away. I think when it comes to LLMs, yes, I think that search is going to be way more advanced and advisors are going to have to develop their own authority because we're moving away from this idea of broad visibility, right? Do as much as you can everywhere you can into borrowed trust, right?
Right. Okay.
And that's what AI is looking for. It's looking for, are you talking about the same things consistently? And are you getting on, trusted platforms who will publish you or post about you or talk about you that are also well respected? And so by 2030, my hope is that advisors have introduced, and found a really good balance between moving, their marketing from all broad visibility into being able to have a balance between that and borrowed trust. Start
Right.
developing your own positioning, start ensuring that you're telling a story that's consistent, that talks about why you're in this beyond money, have a unique point of view, talk about that in incredible places that are well sourced as well, and you've got a nice blended strategy there, because that's where the future is moving. And so I understand it's not going to happen overnight for the financial
Right.
services industry, but I'm
No, no,
hoping.
there's something called compliance we all have to deal with, right?
That's right. Yeah.
The big C, the big C word, right? So, a couple things on that. I just wanna, this is where you and I gotta kinda riff around a little bit, and then, again, we have plenty of time here to unpack a lot of things. So, I often find, like, in my work, and I'm not nowhere near the expert you are, but I think I can speak pretty intelligently about this. I think a lot of advisors confuse marketing, branding, and positioning into one big bucket,
Oh yeah.
while there where there really are separate buckets. That's,
Yeah.
and that's one of the first things I talk about when so this is just me. So when I get somebody comes into my world and they're thinking about hiring me, I always like to, I kind of think I've earned the right to do this. So I'll stress this a little bit. I say, okay, I'm a prospect. I'm a $10 million prospect. You got 1 minute. Why should I hire you? And you should see, like, there's no coherent thought. There's
Hmm.
fear, which means they have no positioning statement. They don't know who they serve. They don't know why there's, and it's just me talking aloud. They don't know why they deserve the business or why they're superior than their competitors. And you got to think you're superior than your competitor. Otherwise, why are we here? It doesn't mean you have to be egotistical about it. It's a quiet confidence, right? But they just lack this because they never thought about, like your point. They'll go hire these marketing people, whoever in whatever domain it is, digital, online, whatever,
Hmm.
and there's no strategy behind it. It's just like,
Hmm.
let's just throw stuff against the wall and something will work, right? And so that's why it always drives me a little crazy. People will run like, oh man, I'm gonna run these Facebook ads, and just like I said, dude, your website's from 1995. Like, what are we thinking about here? Like, come on,
Hmm.
right? But again, they don't know what they don't know, right? So I want to talk about, like, we'll kind of build it up to, like, do some 101s first, right?
Yeah.
So like, in your world, if you had an advisor, and I'll give you like a scenario, and I want to see how you play through it. So as an advisor, right? They are kind of all. It's the typical advisor. Got some money? We can help you, right? All things to all people. So
Yeah.
let's talk about niching a little bit, or I guess in Canada they call it niching. I understand there's two different ways to pronounce it, potato, potato. So my theory is, and my experiences are, if I think a lot of advisors have a niche, they just don't see it because they're
Hmm.
too close to it. Like, if they would really examine their book of business, they would
Yeah.
find, I think almost every advisor has it there hidden if they know how to look for it.
Yeah.
So why do you think, I have my own thoughts, but I wanna hear yours because you do this a lot more than I do. A lot of advisors, I think, are afraid of it.
Oh
Wh
yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's this massive scarcity mindset around it that it's all around saying no to clients, right? Oh, I'm leaving money on the table. And I mean, it always comes down to that in one form or another. Like that is the base fear. And so, I do a lot of talking on the fact that you're not saying no. It doesn't mean that you're saying no. What it is you're actually making your value easier to recognize, right? It in no way, shape, or form does it mean that you can't take on clients beyond that niche, for example. But and even myself, like it's not to say I've never worked with anybody outside of financial advisors, but who do I talk about? I talk about financial advisors,
Right.
right? Like that's
Right.
where my marketing is. And so to put it very simplistically, it's not who you work with, it's who you market to.
Who exactly. So, I agree, I think it's 100% scarcity psychology, and I think, and so they wanna talk to everyone, and then they end up speaking to no one, right? The old saying, "If you try to speak to everyone, you end up talking to no one," right? Because
That's
nothing is
it.
nothing's positioned properly.
That's
Uh, go ahead. If
you're
you're gonna
not
give me
hitting
some good
any you're not hitting
yeah,
any of those
you're
emotional
right,
points. You don't
exactly.
understand what they're
Exactly.
going through. And also, you talked a little bit about they're constantly trying to, prove competence all the time, right?
Yep.
They're in these meetings and so they think that the job is to kind of prove competence when in reality, like that's the base, level now.
That's expected. I mean, that's
That's
not like a
expected.
that's not a plus up, that's expected.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
And
Yeah.
so in those initial meetings, like they're not looking for you to prove your competence, right? They're not looking for you to prove your process is better than another competitor's. They're looking for you to talk to them about relevance. Like, why are you the most relevant advisor for me? And if you
Yeah.
can't get past that question initially, they can't hear the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of
So,
my go ahead, finish your thought, and I've got a thought for you.
no worries. I was just going to say that, like, literally, they are looking for those signals around why you are for them, right? Why are you the most relevant advisor to me? Why do you make sense for me? And until they can hear that, they're not interested. And so
Right.
get past that first.
Yeah, I think I was given some very sage advice many, many years ago by a marketing consultant I knew back in the day, and he said most businesses fall in love with their process or their product. What they
Mhm.
need to do is fall in love with their client.
That's
Right,
right.
and
Yes.
and and I think a lot of advisors fall in love with their proprietary financial planning process or, life of a client, and what and they think that's what they're selling, right?
Mm,
And what they're really selling, which they miss, is like what I always say, "What's the prime directive of an advisor relationship?" And I say it's a deep, meaningful, collaborative partnership.
mhm,
That's, in essence, what the advisor's, quote, unquote, "selling," right? But they
mhm.
don't speak to that. They speak about their process and their planning and their asset management and their portfolio management, and those people, they wanna relate. I mean, if they're in front of you, obviously, they're not going to a robo-advisor if they're in front of you. They want a relationship. They wanna know who's got their back when the chips are down, right? And so many advisors miss that in their messaging and in their positioning,
Yeah.
and that's why they all sound, and it's sad
Yeah.
because there's so many great people who do such a great job for their clients, but they're struggling to grow their businesses because they just don't have, that's why they need to hire you, because
Mhm.
they don't, this is who, not how.
Yeah.
And I think, I always say, "Joe, what's the biggest challenge you have in doing this for 32 years?" I said, 2 words: ego and arrogance. Advisors have big egos and they're arrogant about it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then because they think they can figure it out, right?
That
Because and I said, and so that's why I say, like, Ben Hardy, who, not how. I'm a who to all my clients, right? Where I sit, right? You're a who to your
mhm.
clients. And it's fascinating, and I'd want your take on this, a little sidebar. Do you find it to be true that most advisors who are really successful have a team around them? They
Definitely.
have
Yeah.
consultants and coaches and experts and team, right? They build a village because it takes a village, right?
Yeah.
To do a billion, 2, 3, $4 billion of AUM, or 5, 6, $7 million of top line, right?
Mm,
And yet it's fascinating to me that the $500,000 advisor, who's a good advisor, so we're not, again, it's not a competency here, they struggle to break out because they wanna do it on their own, or they're scarce, they don't wanna invest the money,
mm.
and again, this is me, I've talking for 32 years, it drives me crazy, right? Like, how much good could you do an advisor? And I'm sure, like me, we run across advisors, they wanna have a conversation, you hear their stories, and you're like going, "I can get this, man, I've been down this road 1,000 times." And when it comes time for them to make that commitment, they start having, they start playing that game, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like it's the I say this I'll say respectfully, I'm not even though I'm not talking to any one person, it's their sheer stupidity that causes them not to be as successful they wanna be. There's a
Well,
massive blind spot.
it is. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go so far as stupidity, but I think that it's a lack of objectivity, honestly, and it's really difficult to when you're a business owner because you have, like I said, there's so much invested there to
Yeah,
have a level of objectivity about your business. And so I think my job a lot of the time, it's like 50-50 holding up this mirror. Look,
yeah,
this is who you really are. This is let me show you the patterns around who is it that, you could be extremely relevant to and why. And also the other kind of half of it is like you said, consistently reminding them, I get it, but it's not actually about you.
yes,
And
yeah,
so, like, it's this tie between, let me show you how you can be relevant to them. And yes, this part is all about you.
mhm,
And I'm going to show you that. But then, and your positioning and kind of figuring that out in the discovery phase,
right,
it's all about you to figure out how you can be relevant to them. Then I'm going to kind of go into the define phase and show you all those patterns and kind of get you down to a real profitable niche.
yeah,
And then, we're moving away from you into kind of now moving into marketing, which is all about them. So it's taking, those patterns and how you are relevant to them and weaving it into what matters to them and consistently holding that kind of like objective what they care about consistently in your mind and in your marketing and doubling down there.
right. So, just as a sidebar, you've been at this 15 years, I've been at this when you're over 30 years, you can call stupid, it's okay, you get the right to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that, just FYI. You got a while to
that's
go,
great.
but
I'm not there yet.
you'll get there, trust me, you'll get there one day, right? So so with that, let's talk about some of the things that I know our audience will wanna talk about. So tell me a little bit about the 4C branding framework.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's have a little bit on that, right? I wanna make sure
Right.
I think we're doing a lot of entertaining here, but I wanna make sure we educate a little bit here too, right?
Yeah,
So
no, good idea, good idea. I think that this is something that helps advisors understand the difference between marketing and branding as well. And I mean, even really sage marketers can sometimes kind of confuse the two. And I think when you are talking about the four C's of branding, you want to move through. And I talk to advisors about claiming a niche, understanding your positioning deeply, right? Before then moving on to clarifying your messaging and ensuring your messaging is speaking to what they care about. And the difference is really when you move into that third C about codifying your authority. So this is where you start to develop your own frameworks, your own language, speaking about something in a really unique point of view, maybe even using your unique language uh, to get some recognition, to be seen as an authority in your niche, in your space, before then moving on to consistency and doing that really, really well in the places where your niche are. And so it's really simple in terms of what those four C's are. But I think that claiming your niche before moving on to clarifying your messaging, and then including codifying your authority, which is very different from just, basic marketing, and then being consistent in your marketing. And so I talked to them about those four C's to help them understand the difference between just doing marketing versus doing branding and marketing.
I like it. And of the 4 Cs, I have a thesis on this. Which one is the hardest one for advisors to do?
Codifying their authority. It's also hard to be consistent for sure, but I think everybody struggles there. But when it comes to
Oh,
codifying your authority, you're deciding whether or not you want to be a thought leader or not.
oh,
And not all advisors do, right? And that's
right.
okay. But it's some extra work for sure.
So let's talk about the word codifying for a second, right? Because I don't want to assume, again, we're talking about advisors here and they're smart people, but they don't understand this. So pretend we're all like Labrador retrievers. We're nice dogs, but we're not that bright. So explain to us what your definition of codify is and give us an example.
So, I mean, even just, my own language around having where I talk about niche authority and I talk to advisors about developing a niche funnel. That's my own language. And I've developed a framework around how my own kind of IP around how I help advisors figure out their niche. All of that is my own, my own thought processes. And so you do have to develop your own way of doing things, and
Uh,
so it helps you just have, and even if it's just a unique point of view, put some language around that, make it your
so
own.
it's a language pattern, basically what it boils
Yeah,
down to. Okay,
yeah,
okay, so so basically it's articulating something, but using a unique set of languages or words or something like that, so it makes it unique, it makes it yours, and so we're that's what we're so codifying it is like you own that
ownership. Yeah,
in
have
their
some
minds. Okay.
strategic ownership. Yeah,
Okay, I like that. That's good. That's good. That helps out because I didn't want to assume that, so that really
that's helpful for me
yeah
too. Thank you.
yeah cool. No, that's all good. So let's talk about this because I think there's a lot. Look, I've got clients of mine who they have tremendous YouTube channels. They do podcasts, right? And they do all. I mean, I've got people, and again, everybody's compliance game's a little bit different. You know that as well as I do. But let's talk about one of the things, which is, how to go ahead and when you want to put something out, when you want to maybe say something bold or something that is edgy, right? Or could have the appearance of edgy. I don't know if compliance knows what the word edgy means, but you said, there's ways to do that, will not run afoul. Again, and I just want to quantify this. Everybody's compliance scheme is different. So now I'm going to talk like normal people. And then you guys got to take it to your compliance people and then have them do it abnormally. But we can't help you with that. So with that said, what are some ways that advisors can do a little bit better job at articulation, maybe being a little bit more edgy, bold, but
Mhm.
staying away from the landmine? So, what are some no goes when it
Yeah.
comes to that kind of, that kind of languaging or marketing, if you will?
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, being from, the corporate world there, obviously I had my hands in compliance every single day. And so I understand the challenges that advisors go through and being told really to just stick to education, right? But that kind of generic financial education can be done by anyone. And so
Mm,
we're just, before talking about how to be found. And talking about that generic financial education that really any advisor could provide or anybody could look up these days without adding your own experiences to that, you're not going to be found. You're not going to be noticed at all. You're not going to be picked up by any LLMs. So I think we have to move from education to adding the experience. And so I talk to advisors a lot of times about documentation and like basically that's how you're going to have to kind of evolve your marketing in the future to s- you're going to but I actually think and I want to make this clear that if you do this correctly that without naming names
right.
without you know keeping it anonymized, this is actually the easiest thing for kind of compliance to say yes to because you're simply talking about insights, stories, and processes in a really entertaining way because they're coming from your experiences or
Right.
client experiences, which is what they kind of prefer. And so I think it's actually going to start to be easier, right?
Okay.
If you can document kind of your own experiences, your own insights, client stories, or your own story even about moving through your own day, your own processes, things like that. Those are things that compliance can say yes to very easily, as long as it's remains anonymous.
I like that because I think advisors try to overeducate and they under influence. Like think like,
Hmm.
oh, if I let me I just happen to be connected to a lot of advisors on LinkedIn. I'm sure you are too.
Hmm.
And you have the same experience I do. Their firm puts out a piece and you've got 30 of them on your feed. Same thing.
Yeah,
And when you look at them, there's like no shares, no likes, they're like dead. They're in the algorithm for like 3 minutes and they're gone.
yeah.
Right? So, and I've often felt that advisors they do a poor most advisors, again, there's always exceptions. There are 2 things I think advisors need to really be focused on. I'd be curious about your opinion on this. And I think it picks right into your narrative. I would rather an advisor go on LinkedIn on their iPhone on a video saying, "I just got done with a review with one of my top clients. They've been with me 20 years, and here's some things we found and looking through their estate plan. And just as an FYI, you guys need to know when you need to get with your advisor." Like I like that stuff, right? It's
Hmm.
real. It's a little bit of a story. It's no name stuff like that. It's giving good financial guidance, right? Not specific
Mhm,
advice, right? From that
mhm.
perspective.
Yeah,
I much rather have that than here's our latest market update. Right?
yeah.
That nobody cares. So what do you think about quantity versus quality when it comes to messaging? Because I think a lot of advisors wanna flood the whole they wanna flood LinkedIn with stuff, right? And it is
Mhm.
just stuff versus and I know we're getting a little tactical here, but this just came up recently, so I'm being a little greedy here with this for a second. Do you think it's better to post maybe once or twice a week, but something really, really personal, really unique? Or am I better off regurgitating third-party articles every day? What do you think is gonna serve the advisor better?
Definitely quality over quantity.
That's
A
what I thought.
Yeah, a couple of times a week over 5 times a week. But regardless, everything you put out these days, you're being judged on, could anybody write this? And so or could AI write this, right? And so every
Yeah,
time, you know, the question you wanna ask yourself is, could only I write this, right? What is in here that is signaling it's coming from Natalie? And so there has to be a few things in every single post or every single article that signals it's coming from me and nobody else could kind of say this.
yeah,
Maybe it's a strong opinion that you have that you're well known for. Maybe it's your own process. And this is kind of why codifying your authority is going to become even more important in the future because it's like you can put some of your own language around that and start to inject that into copy as well, right? That only you say this over and over again. And so it's things like that that only you could do that will be promoted. And if it can be done by more than, you know, if it can be done by multiple people, it's just gonna get
okay.
demoted.
So basically, it becomes your uniqueness. It becomes that's your differential, in other words. What you're
That's
saying.
it.
Your codification is your differential when it
Yeah.
comes to okay. So let's we got some time. So I want to talk about authority again. I want to go back to that because I think a lot of advisors misunderstand that. I want to know where social proof fits into that, into your
Mhm.
when you look at your authority ecosystem, yours.
Yeah.
Where would you put social proof? So and just so everybody understand what we're talking about here, testimonials, endorsements, things like that. As now in the United States, SEC and FINRA have now allowed them with, and again, some great caveats on those, of course. A lot of my clients are really out there getting a lot of five-star Google reviews because it seems to help with the Google algorithm and some of the LLM algorithms too. Talk to me about best practices around getting and why it's important, if you believe it's important, to
Mhm.
have social proof as part of your authority package.
I definitely agree social proof is very important. I think not only harking back to what we were talking about borrowed trust, I think that there are going to be if you are working on your own niche authority, there are going to be certain places that your niche trusts and also testimonials and things like that. If yes, you can't tell somebody what to say, but the fact that for example, I connect with just like financial advisors. All my connections are financial advisors. So the people who comment on my post, they're all financial advisors. That in itself is social proof. The fact that not only testimonials are directly from financial, so let's say you're an advisor working with doctors, right?
Okay.
If you have testimonials from doctors, great. That's what people are looking for. If you have comments from people within the health industry, great. That's what people are looking for. That's a level of social proof. So you want to be mindful around who it is that you're even connecting to and building up a really targeted audience there as well. I think that we're moving away from just connecting with anyone and everyone, as many followers as possible, because people are starting to realize like your engagement isn't from who you're saying you work with,
Right.
which is very interesting to people. People are noticing that. So it's not just about how many followers you have anymore. It's like who thinks you have a good point, who
Yeah.
is agreeing with you.
Right.
And so social proof is changing. And it's definitely with financial services is catching up when it comes to testimonials, I think, which is great. We're already there. Now, advisors are also being challenged to think about things like LinkedIn's 360 Brew, where the algorithm itself is looking at what do you post about? Who are you connected with? Who's commenting on your stuff? The stuff that you're sharing, like, is it from a credible source? So, if all of that shows, oh, health industry, oh, doctors, then LinkedIn Brew is going to promote you. You're going to be seen as a credible advisor. And so even the algorithms themselves are changing how they're seeing social proof. And so now advisors are being challenged to go beyond just testimonials and even thinking about how algorithms and LLMs see credibility.
Mm. Interesting. So then, so I yeah, I heard very little about the LinkedIn morning brews. That's interesting.
Mm.
So basically that it sounds like it's going to be just something that LinkedIn itself promotes or pushes out if they find interesting articles, interesting things that it basically turbocharges you, but you can't buy it. You have to be selected. Is
Yeah, that's
what
right.
I
So it's just it's 360 Brew is LinkedIn's name for
okay. So it's right.
their own kind of algorithm of who they promote and what they push forward,
Mm,
and how they analyze your credibility. And the majority of social media platforms have their own algorithm for how they, pick up on credible sources. Maybe it is just, for example, like Instagram is just like in overall engagement, right? Like versus LinkedIn is a little bit more uh, picky, let's say,
yep.
about who is a credible source and why. So they will challenge kind of who are you connecting with? You say you work with these people, but is that, is that who you're connecting with and who you're actually speaking to? Because if not, you kind of you don't look credible, so we're not going to promote you. So they're being picky about who is being seen as an authority at this day, and I understand why. Right? There's lots of people who claim fame or claim what they're doing is making tons of money, and it's not.
Right.
Right? Anybody can kind of claim, but now it's like the proof is in the pudding, and
Yeah.
LinkedIn's trying to do a good job of
Yeah.
of that.
Like on Intra, anybody could rent a Lambo for the day or a yacht and take some
Yeah,
pictures, right? Yeah,
yeah,
good. So let's talk about your niche funnel. So
yeah.
explain that to us. Like what is your creation?
Yeah. So my belief is first and foremost, you need to have your niche positioning. You need to understand exactly who it is that you are meant to serve and why, and be able to then move into branding and talk about, yeah, your like have all your messaging and your story crafted around that positioning before then moving into marketing. And how I do, niche positioning is different. And so I talk to advisors about kind of this 3 steps for how they can do it themselves, being the niche funnel, right? So figure out, do some deep discovery on yourself. And so, like I was saying, it does start with you. You have to recognize those patterns, look at, who you enjoy working with and what topics you enjoy, and, look at your inbox, look at your calendar, all those things, but then also have a look at who you are as a person and your history and what that's telling you as well before moving into defining a niche, which is all about understanding kind of that large category of people that see themselves as a group. I think that's very important before moving into understanding your market segment, which is like what you have in common with them, identifying your relevance, and then moving into strategic ownership. And so the three parts of having a niche really need that. They need a shared identity, they need you to have some sort of relevance to them, and you have that included in your brand messaging. And you absolutely need strategic ownership. You need to be doing that differently before you can move into differentiating yourself with things like your process or how you're doing it or how you're talking about it. So that is the niche funnel, getting all that in place before then moving on to the tactical and getting and going out with it. So it's a lot of strategy and a lot of thinking, but when it all comes together, it works really well.
Yeah, the key thing is right for advisors to understand that it's mission critical,
Yeah.
make the time for it, put the budget aside to go hire the who, i.e.
Mhm.
you, right? In essence, and have a long-term commitment. I find a lot of times advisors will they have attention deficit disorder, and they'll try something for 90 days, if maybe 90 days, and they don't see anything happen immediately,
Mhm.
right? And then they're like, well, this doesn't work. And I
Mhm.
think and I want you to start wrapping this up. I wanted to talk about expectations for a second. I think it's really,
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah.
uh, I don't do silver bullet stuff. I know you don't do silver bullet stuff.
No.
So how do you when you have an advisor client who's ready to engage you, but they talk like this. Well, now how long is this gonna take? Like, how fast am I gonna see my first client? Like, how long before the stuff really takes? What
Mm,
kind of advice or feedback would you give an advisors thinking about again, this is very strategic what you and I are talking about today.
yeah.
We're not talking about what kind of LinkedIn ads or we're talking about like again the real important strategic pieces here.
Mhm, planning behind it, yeah.
What timeline would you tell an advisor to get their head around? Is
Mhm,
it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 18 months? For me, like, if a client comes to me and say, "I'm thinking about joining this networking group." Like, "Well, look, that's fine. You gotta give it 1 year, and you gotta play full out. If you're not
yeah.
willing to do that, then don't do it, right?
Mm,
Don't go there for the 2 meetings and say, 'Well, I haven't met anybody yet, and this doesn't work.'" Like, no. Like, it's a 1-year deal. So I'm just curious from your perspective, somebody who is going to engage you or somebody like you,
yeah.
how much runway should they be thinking about in that regard?
Well, niche authority is a long-term strategy, and so I
Okay.
will let them know that up front. I think that the strategy part of it that to help them work through their niche positioning, their brand messaging, their marketing planning, like the strategic playbooks that we build initially, that can take anywhere from 6 weeks to 3 months.
Right,
And
sure.
so consider that your first 90 days if we have the longest kind of run for planning.
Okay.
Then we've got to kind of implement. And I say, like, implementation is all around, getting that up and going in your social media, in your websites, figuring out what that client experience flows looks like and injecting it into that too. So then we're talking about simple implementation. That's another 90 days. Okay, great. Now you're at 6 months, let's say. Now you're ready to execute on the marketing side of things. So you've done the planning, you've done the implementation. Now you're going out with the plan being, a combination of visibility and borrowed trust, right? And so then I say give it 6 months from then,
Okay.
right? Where you're 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 working those 3 engines that we have decided to focus on, some sort of social media platform, some sort of method to get your thought leadership out there, some sort of way to get in front of clients. And now we're using those and we're combining them to get the leverage out of every single one in our plan, and we're working it for 6 months. So I agree with you. It's a year.
15 months, actually, if I did the math in my head, right? 90,
Yeah,
90,
yeah.
90. So, yeah, and I think that's really, really important because I think advisors, like anything else, they want it yesterday. I think the entire industry is a massive case of impatience, right?
Yeah.
And so this is where I think so I have a saying that when someone comes into my world, I said, "Look, I'd rather you have no experience with me than a bad one." And because I just truly because like reputation is everything in our game. We talk about
Mhm.
you and I have our own version of authority marketing going on and doing what we do, right? And so we
Yeah.
have to protect it. So I'm just curious, and then we'll definitely wrap it up now. Who do you work best with? Who do you
Yeah.
work worst with?
That is a great question, and I definitely wanna answer that, but I wanna clarify one thing when it comes to
Sure.
niche authority also,
Okay.
that it really is slow down to speed up. And so you and I, we function off niche authority now, right? Like we use authority marketing to help us get inbound, right? People come
Mhm.
to us. So I want to be clear that although you're doing a good amount of upfront work, it's so you are not constantly recreating the wheel with your marketing all the time, starting from scratch with every single conversation that you have, starting from scratch in every single sales conversation. By the time people come to us, they're practically ready to work with us, right? And so the work is all half done at that point. And so I think that I just want to make clear that yes, it is a long-term strategy, but the goal behind it is to slow down to speed up eventually, to get to a point where you're not doing hard sales with every single conversation. They're coming already, they're coming already leaning in, ready. So that's the whole point that I want to make clear, and then I can definitely jump into your question.
Okay, go. First of all, thanks for that clarification. That really is
Yeah.
helpful. but I definitely wanna make sure we answer our question, which is who you work best with and who do you not wanna work with, right? Because I think, again, from our audience perspective, I'm here the reason why I said yes to this interview, because number 1, I'm always fascinated by niching and branding and stuff like that. Number 2, I think my audience gets tired of looking at me and hearing about me, so that kinda helps a little bit too. But I also wanna make sure that, from your perspective, you attract this goes back to our whole thesis here of niching. We wanna attract who you wanna attract. We wanna kinda I always say good, great marketing attracts and repels simultaneously, right, in that
Mhm,
regard. So,
mhm.
who do you wanna attract? Who do you wanna repel?
So, I usually work with experienced advisors, who are probably in the business for, 10 to 15 years at this point. They
Okay.
understand who it is that they want to work with, enjoy working with. They're at a point with their book of business as well where, they're ready, likely, to maybe even get rid of the bottom 25% of their book. And when they do take on clients, it's like they really only want it to be this type of client. And so they're ready to figure out who that is and also put some language around it because at the point where they're ready to work with me, they are purpose-driven advisors. It's like, "No, I know what I want to do. I also know what I want to say and I need to kind of figure out how to do that well. And that's usually when they come to me.
Yeah.
So purpose-driven advisors who don't want to sound like everybody else.
Okay, good, I like that. And so advisors who have a level of success, so they're good, but they
Mhm.
wanna be great.
That's right.
That would okay. And if you're terminal, we can't help you. Basically what it boils down to. I said a respect, but it's true. I mean, sometimes you just can't do magic acts for people, right? It's not the right problem. So is there anybody you don't work well with? So I got who you want, that's great. So is there
Mhm.
any so I mean, I can sit there, but you'll be nicer about than I will be. So why don't you take a stab at it? So who don't you work who would you rather not have contact you?
Well, I mean, I feel like you kinda said it. We have a similar who we don't enjoy to work with. Those advisors who come to us and wanting kind of like instant leads. When an advisor comes to me talking about leads, 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 I know you're not ready for me, right? Like you want it
Mhm.
today. And I understand the mentality around that, but you're still in scarcity mode. And that's something that you almost have to learn the hard way doesn't work, right?
Yep. I agree.
And so I think when advisors come to me talking about immediate, tactical execution and wanting, tons of leads today, instead of wanting to be known for something, to want to start connecting with the right clients, so that type of language signals something different to me. I can
Okay.
help you be known, but I'm not going to help you get, thousands of leads tomorrow.
That's perfect. Well said, well said. So look, this has been a blast. I came
Yeah.
into this like, well, we're just gonna shoot it and see what happens, right? From that perspective,
Yeah.
I think you did a really great job. So I appreciate you pulling up with some of my little, quirkiness. So let me just wrap this up. So first of all, Natalie's contact information will be in the show notes. It'll be here if you're on our podcast, it will be there in the show notes, also her links, everything like that. So you can definitely, again, if you qualify in that bucket, you should definitely reach out to her. If not, then do yourself a favor, don't. I want to thank everybody for listening and watching this episode of the Magellan Network Show. If anybody needs to know how to find me, CoachJoe.guru. And with that, Natalie, thank you so much for your time today, and we are out.
Pleasure. Thank you.